Hi, I'm Andrew Thompson, a co-founder at Invest Bay. For new listeners, Invest Bay is a real-world asset tokenization platform. I'm here today with Rob Davies, who is the development director for a very exciting resort development project. I would say truly a landmark development in Cape Verde.
Hi, Andrew.
Cape Verde, I should say. Rob, welcome. I understand that you have enjoyed a very interesting career. If I'm right, you began as a UK registered architect, designing golf and conference hotels. And since then, you've led the development of many successful resorts and projects on every continent across the globe for all kinds of clients, including the Walt Disney Company. Does that sound like you?
Sounds like me, yes, indeed.
Is there anything else that you would say to our listeners in terms of your career and background before we get into this latest project?
No, I mean, this kind of major resort development is something that I've been lucky enough to specialize in for the last 20 years, I would say, since the Walt Disney Company time. So I've been very lucky in the kinds of places where I've worked, and the projects are exciting.
Super. Okay, let's dive in and talk a bit more about Tarafo Bay, your latest development project. It's situated on the south coast of Boa Vista in the beautiful archipelago of Cape Verde. I understand Cape Verde is the closest tropical island to Europe, and it's on the same latitude as Bermuda.
Barbados.
As Barbados. Thank you for correcting.
Slightly different.
Yes, great.
I've worked in Bermuda as well, so I know.
Right. Can you say a little bit more about the project, perhaps help to introduce it as a concept, who started it, who's behind it?
Sure. Well, let's do that first. So the project is the initial vision of a gentleman called Tim Strawson, a British entrepreneur, very successful guy, who fell in love with Cape Verde approximately 15 years ago through his love of kite surfing. And he's wanted to do something there for a long time and eventually found this huge piece of land. It's 800 hectares and larger. With 6 kilometers of beachfront.
Wow.
And entered discussions to develop his vision for a highly sustainable resort. And I've been lucky enough to help him for the last 3 years, along with other team members and master planners and architects, etc. It's a golf-focused development on one hand. It will have 4 golf courses. The land is very large, so it can accommodate several hotels and a lot of residential, between, as big as beachfront villas, large beachfront villas, through to small apartments, and with all the classic amenities you'd expect in a resort environment: spa, health and beauty, wellness, swimming activities, fishing, game fishing. So it's really exciting.
So phase one is a hotel with residences, villas, also beachfront cabanas, I understand, and a golf course.
That's right.
And then there are further phases beyond that, which will take many years, I expect.
Yes, we expect it to be between 10 and 20 years. It will roll organically as the demand increases, and as also things like the flight capacity, the airline capacities increase. So, if you look at Europe, the European equivalents, places like Quinta del Lago or La Manga Club in Spain, these are projects that have been around for 20, 25 years, and they continue to grow and develop. And the people that get in at the ground floor, at the early stage, while it's still a vision, often do very, very well because of the appreciation in value of their properties.
Makes sense. Maybe we just take a step back before we go a bit more into detail about Tarafo Bay. I'm just conscious that some of our viewers might not be that well versed in construction and development projects, particularly on this kind of scale. it might be useful to provide our listeners a bit better understanding of the link perhaps between the developer, the operator, the contract, the finance. Can you help just to sort of put a bit of meat around the bones for what is the typical construction development process?
Okay. Well, the important thing here is really for the first phase, the focus is two things, the hotel and the golf course. It's the hotel and the residences, the branded residences around it, that are the economic driver of the project. So the first thing to do is get a great operator on board, and we have had good discussions and have entered a preliminary agreement with the Accor Hotel Group, fifth largest in the world, 820,000 beds under management around the world. So you might recognize brands such as Sofitel, Meridian at the higher end, Pullman, down through to things like Ibis and Novotel. French company, but global, absolutely global. So that's a linchpin in getting these kinds of projects to be successful, is having a great operator. Secondly is having a really strong design team and putting together drawings and plans and concepts that are sufficiently tightly drawn that the builder, when you've got a builder, can stick to those and create something without any nasty surprises. It's about avoiding surprises along the way. And we've got a great contractor that we're working with, which is a firm based in Lisbon and Madrid. They're global, again, large, and they're called Grupo San Jose, with fantastic experience of developing and building in Cape Verde. So they understand the challenges of bringing materials to the island. Where possible, they use local materials and local labor, which is, an important thing for us as part of our sustainability vision and our social equity vision, is to have local teams and local materials as far as possible. But of course, they will also bring in materials. If you're bringing, they don't make elevators or lifts or, air conditioning systems in Cape Verde, so we have to bring those in from other countries. But that's a well understood process. It happens all over the world. So those are the kinds of things. It's a team effort, and it's about managing the team to get the right result.
Got it. And you mentioned, I think for our listeners, it would be interesting to understand. So this is a project being built on an island, and you do have to bring materials in. Does that add complexity, or is it just business as usual because every development project needs to bring in some materials from somewhere?
Yeah, we're operating in a global environment, and materials are shipped around the world, and we will bring in materials from lots of different countries. Our objective is to keep that to a minimum, because obviously sustainable miles are of strong importance to us, keeping that low. But you can't do these kinds of projects without bringing in
Clear.
Materials from China and from Europe and even from the Americas.
Clear. And maybe keeping on the theme of developing an island location, I've seen the photographs of where this project will be built, and it seems to be a beautiful, unspoiled part of the world. Has this presented certain unique challenges? How supportive has the Cape Verde government been in this process? How does it actually work on the ground in terms of permitting and getting further ahead on a project of this scale?
Firstly, Cape Verde Islands, there is total population of 500,000 people in the islands. For them, tourism is a really important part of their future growth and economy, and is already at least a third of the economy of the country. So promoting tourism, making tourism projects happen is important to them. But they're smart enough to recognize that untrammeled development, uncontrolled development is a bad thing. And they don't want to see the islands become overdeveloped. And so they're very careful about designating particular locations for development. And the sites we're working on have been studied. They've had environmental impacts assessments. Given that our beach, for example, our 6-kilometer beach, is a favorite place for turtles to lay eggs, we've got to be mindful of those sorts of things.
Definitely. Everybody loves the turtles.
They do, and we do especially. But all of that stuff is manageable, and we know what we have to do. A small example with the turtles was we have to be really careful about lighting. We can't light the site up like a Christmas tree. You have to have low-level lighting. You have to certain frequencies so that the turtles aren't misguided off their path. But it's all doable. It's all workable. The government follows European norms of construction and European rules of health and safety and all those kinds of things. So it's like working in Europe, but obviously a bit further away.
And what about so in principle, Cape Verde government is interested in supporting tourism. It sounds like and supporting developments which will attract more tourists. Are there capacity issues? What is the status of the airport and how do tourists get there? What does the future look like? Are there any changes or improvements on the infrastructure side taking place?
So at the moment, Boa Vista Island. So we're approximately 20 minutes from the airport on good roads. So it's well connected to the airport. The airport has over 100 airport movements a week. But at the moment, those are mostly daytime flights. And they come from all over Europe and from places like Prague, many from the UK because the British are a big contingent, and lots from Portugal because of the historic colonial collections.
Germany, I think, as well.
Germany, Sweden, so France, so Luxembourg. Italy is another big market. So it's a very diversified market, and flights are coming in from all over Europe. The current issue is that the Boa Vista Airport cannot take night flights, and that's two things. One, you have to have a slightly longer runway, and two, you have to have special night lights put in. Mm-hmm. The airport is now being run by Vinci, the French conglomerate, mm-hmm. who run airports all over the world. And as part of that, they are committed to putting in those lights and putting in that runway extension. And all that's going to do is increase the flight capacity. But otherwise, development is being controlled and managed in a careful manner. Much of the island of Boa Vista, it's a beautiful island, has been designated as a natural park, so will not be developed. And we won't see the kinds of overcrowded developments you might see in other islands, mm-hmm. Tenerife, for example, or Mallorca, that will later cause some major challenges for the locals.
Sounds really wonderful. Let's now perhaps get into the teeth of the project, perhaps from a investor's perspective. Maybe first on permitting and timeline. Is everything already in place? Are you already building, or you expect to start building? When do you expect to complete this first phase of the project?
So we're at the last stage of the permit process. We have all our fundamental permits, the zoning, the planning permissions, and we have the environmental approval for the hotel development. We're waiting for the environmental approval for the golf, but that's a matter of days or weeks. And we're now just about to start on what's called the POE locally, which is the building regs, which means where you're going to run your drainage pipes and how big are the foundations of the building. But those are formalities. So all the fundamental principles are established. That's going to take us a few more months, and we hope to start construction seriously by the end of springtime, so late May next year, 2025. And we're anticipating a construction period of 2 years. So opening both the hotel with its residences and the golf course in the summer of 2027.
Okay, not too far away. And you mentioned the golf course a couple of times. Boa Vista is quite a dry island, but golf courses are quite thirsty usually. How do you solve this challenge?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky. On the one hand, we have already secured from the government land for a photovoltaic PV farm. So all our energy, our needs for electrical energy, are being provided by ourselves from our own grid. We export surplus energy to the to the island, but we don't rely on the island to bring energy in. Doing it ourselves means we can do it very cost effectively. And as you say, golf courses are hungry for water, so we're desalinating our own water with what's called a reverse osmosis plant. And we basically supply electricity to that plant. It sucks water out of the sea, takes all the salt out, and that water will be both for our own, drinking purposes and irrigation purposes, but also for the golf course. The water that runs off from things like bathrooms and toilets, it's going to be recycled, cleaned, put into lakes, so that water can be then used for future irrigation. So as the development grows and increases in size, you get more sort of recycling of water as well as having to generate water, which is part of the principles of sustainability that we're operating to.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, turning now to the hotel. I think you've explained previously that the project is really a hotel play, less of a real estate play, but more of a hotel play. What is the contract on which the hotel is being run? I know there's typically you have management contracts, or you have lease contracts, or hybrid contracts. What have you chosen in this case, and why? What are the sort of pros and cons of that type of contract?
Sure. Well, it's a classic management contract, which is the vast majority of Accor's contracts are those, which means they provide management services. But it's done on an incentivized basis. So they get a basic fee for doing the job, which is both running the hotel and bringing customers from Europe to the hotel. And then, depending on how well they perform, they get an upside profit. And that motivates them to do a great job. And they will do a great job because they're highly professional. Lease contracts are very rare these days and usually only occur in city centres where actually the developer or the investor is more interested in the sort of real estate aspects than in the hotel aspects. So we've taken the classic route of a management contract.
Okay. And so that piece is in place, and for investors, what are the key risks and opportunities from an investor's perspective into this project?
Yeah,
because you have I would say slightly unique approach in terms of how you're going about buying and selling and rebuying. Do you want to explain a little bit about the process and particularly from an investor's perspective?
Sure. Well, as you said, Andrew, earlier, this is about hotel performance, not about real estate performance particularly. So the majority of the residential units, from studios up to large apartments, will be operated as branded residences by the hotel. And therefore, you as an owner of one of those branded residences, you don't have to go onto Airbnb or another letting platform to try and fill it when you're not there, because you'll be there 2 or 3 weeks a year, and we include 2 weeks free as part of the investment. But the hotel will operate it, and you will get a dividend each year based on the performance of the hotel. And we've made sure that the studies we've done it with major international hotel specialists and in discussion with Accor. We've made sure that the assumptions we've made are very conservative. The hotels perform extremely well in Boa Vista. For some of the groups, their most high-performing hotels in the world are actually in Boa Vista.
Wow.
And so we've been very conservative, and we see lots of potential for upside of return on investment. And ultimately, we plan to then sell the branded residence with the hotel in a period of between 5 and 7 years after the opening of the hotel, when the operating income has got to a good, stable level, which means that there will be an exit for our investors. We do hope they want to stay with us. They've fallen in love with Cape Verde enough that they want to stay, and we will then hopefully have them come along with us on later phases.
Okay, so you pre-sell the apartments, you develop it out, you hold it together with those investors who have pre-bought those apartments for a period, 5 years, let's say, and then you have an option to buy back and resell to an institutional investor,
That's
at which time you also will exit from your ownership of the hotel, of the pure
of that
hotel
particular
cloud.
hotel.
Got
yes.
it, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We are keeping ownership of the golf course and some of the common facilities. We think for the long-term future of the development that it's important to keep those kinds of controls in place. Our investor, Tim, is taking a very long-term view of this project.
Okay. And you've been marketing for a month or so. How are sales going so far?
Really well, phenomenally well. We're at about 40 sales. We're at 40 sales, and we've literally been at it a month.
So that's more than one a day. Wow.
Yeah. I think that the timing is right for Cape Verde, and the timing is right for this kind of investment, and it's set at a level where it's actually affordable for many people.
Okay. And so what would be the risks for an investor looking at this project? What would be the main risks, and how do you mitigate those?
Yeah, I mean, all development projects have risks, of course, and my job is to minimize those. And really, there's two main risks. One is what we would call construction risk, and that's that the costs run over, or the contractor is delayed, and the project takes longer to build and costs more money to build. There are ways, based on experience, of preventing that, and there are really two main ways. The first is to make sure that you've got everything buttoned down and designed to the detail, to the last letter, before you start construction. And that's something I learned at Disney. They never open hotels late. They never open them over cost. That's the rule. So you button down the design, but also then you use a contractor and have a very tight fixed price contract with a blue chip contractor who has a reputation for delivering, and certainly our partner here does. And you just make sure that they have a big penalty if they go over time or cost. So that's the construction risk. And the other risk is really operator risk. Will the operator perform? And again, that's about the quality of your partner. And we know that hotels do work in Boa Vista quite well, very well. And we know that Accor are capable of putting a hotel here on this island and making it perform extremely well, particularly as their database of customers is Europe dominated. And this Cape Verde is really a European destination, not an American destination. So we think we've got that covered.
Okay, so the exit is sort of targeted 150% of the purchase price.
Correct.
And do you have some sense of the income returns during the hold period?
Yeah, we're targeting, as I said, on a conservative basis, we're targeting 7 to 10% annual yield each year over the life of the holding of the investment.
Got it. And that's payable monthly, quarterly?
No, payable at year end when the final accounts are done for each year, which will be on a classic hotel model basis. So it's a well understood process, and there will be an annual dividend.
Great, Rob. We'll finish with some personal perspectives, but before we get there, is there anything else that you would like to highlight about Tarafo Bay? Again, ideally from an investor's project perspective, you think our listeners would be interested in?
Yes, I think there's one thing. I mean, particularly for those investors who today are concerned about travel and about climate and such issues. Tim Strawson's vision for this project since the very beginning has always been about sustainability and ecotourism. And sustainability isn't just about energy, although we're obviously working a lot on that issue, but it's also about sustainable materials. It's also about investing back into the local community. So Tim has set up a charity. We call it the Boa Vista Trust, which you can see on a website if you look up for Boa Vista Trust, where jointly with the government, we will be investing in the local population to train, to educate so that they can create their own businesses, so that they can provide skills for the project, and also things like housing and medical. So we expect and hope and believe we are creating the next generation of sustainable golf resorts for the world.
It certainly sounds like, and I think very much this is the way that tourism and tourism developments are going. So fantastic to see you leading the way with Tarafo Bay. Maybe finishing with some personal perspectives, Rob. Tell our listeners what you perhaps love most about your job, and what also keeps you up at night.
Well, firstly, I'm trained at root as an architect, so I like the thinking through the concepts, the visions, and getting those working, and creating something special and unique. Since I've started my career, I've always wanted, and I believe achieved most of the time, creating something that was local to the place. So if you went to the project I delivered in Provence, it feels like a Provence village. And it's now 30 years old, so it even feels old. So that kind of local feel, that local context. And then the process of delivery of these kinds of projects is all about teams. It's all about people. And I love working with teams. I love putting together teams. I love motivating them. And that's what I've done all my career. What keeps me awake at night? I guess just making sure that we achieve something special, which I said is, part of my motivation. We want to create something that's unique and memorable and profitable. It has to stand on its own 2 feet, and it has to survive. The challenge is in doing that is just getting it right, and that's what I have spent 40 years learning how to do, I think.
I think that's a very nice way to finish, Rob. And so I would like to thank you very much for your time and wish you every success for Tarafo Bay. It sounds really like a really exceptional project for all kinds of reasons, and not least from the perspective of a potential investor. So good luck and thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, Andrew. Thank you.